It's the 24th of January today, and I'm going to go out and do a little bit of a quick walk. And Zach and I are going to try to figure out, well, let me back up a step. The postseason scouting, most people will go out and they'll try to find the places where the deer have been during the fall. They'll try to find trails and rubs and scrapes and basically deer sign, deer beds. What I generally look for are the entry and exit routes that will take me into my hunting area. What are the routes that I can use where I can sneak in and out without the deer knowing that I'm hunting them? Because over the course of a season, that's going to make probably, well, I know it's going to make more impact on my success than sitting over the very best deer sign. You can have the best deer sign on the property and stand in the perfect tree, but if the access to it is marginal, where some of the deer know that you're coming and going, that spot's not as good as hunting a spot that's got the perfect entry and exit, where the deer never know that you're going in and out, even if it overlooks a little bit more marginal sign. The spot we're going to today, I'll walk down in here and then I'll talk about it a little bit more. That way we can kind of keep moving here. But it's a spot that I've hunted quite a bit, but it's always been borderline successful. And I know why, part of the reason why. We're going to go down and try to work our way through that puzzle. When we go in to hunt this spot, we get to about here and we beeline it right for this ridge that's over my right shoulder. There's kind of a little hog back or a hump there, and that little small secondary ridge takes us all the way down into this little valley. And there's a redneck blind down in there, and in some years there have been some really good deer that I've hunted and you know, that I could not hunt down in there before we put that redneck blind in. Well, since we put it in, we haven't had any shooter bucks or bucks that we've really been after that have been living down in there, so I haven't hunted it all that much. And the few times that I have hunted it, like I said, it's been kind of a, I'd say it's been botched a lot of times. And the reason is because the deer know that we're coming and they know when we leave. So just going down that ridge and just popping out, overlooking those two little food plots, that doesn't work very good. So let's go down and look at that first, and then we'll backtrack and try to come up with a better solution for getting in and out of there. We usually do fine getting about this far. Coming across that open field's not bad, because we usually, you know, by the time you walk up there, I guess if there are deer out in that field, we've kind of bumped them out. But it starts to fall apart once we get to the edge of the timber here. And you'll see as we go out on this ridge, it's a little bit open on both sides. So the deer that are bedded over on that ridge and the deer that are bedded over on the ridge to the right, they can both see us as we're walking down through here. Like I said, there's no more important thing that you can do during this postseason than to come up with the best way to get to and from these stands without the deer knowing it. Our normal route is coming right down this mowed path, and you'll see where we pop out here in just a second, overlooking these two little food plots down here, and the stand is, or the blind is right between them. But this spot is so secluded, it's right in the middle of the farm, that almost any time of the day when you come down in here, you'll find deer out in those little plots. So it makes it really tough to get in here without blowing them out. And you know, anytime you go into a valley, there's always risk with that anyway, with the swirling winds. And you throw that, you know, the fact that now you might have deer that are already out there into the mix, and it makes this spot even harder to hunt. The blind is over to my left here, and these are those two little food plots. It sets up really nice. If there was a buck down in here that I was trying to hunt, I can't think of a better place to kill that deer than right here, assuming that we can hunt it without being detected. We've got a tube going across this ditch, and the blind sits about 15 yards from that crossing. And we built that in order to go, you know, be able to run equipment back and forth when we're working on these plots. But the deer have adopted that as this perfect funnel. When they travel down through this valley, they funnel right past in front of that blind. So it's a killer spot. It's just the access is really bad. Studying this spot, the obvious solution is to use this ditch. That's the best thing we got going for us here. I just don't know. I've got to walk this thing and see if it's deep enough, and you know, whether it's enough to actually conceal us when we come sneaking down there. If that works, you can see that blind is only 5 or 6 feet off the edge of that ditch, we could come down in here with deer in these plots, especially if we planted something there or maybe did a hinge cut of a couple of trees maybe. We'd have to do something to create a screen where we could get out of the ditch and into the blind without these deer knowing it. And it's just as important at the end of the hunt too. You know, you might say that the buck that you're after is not out there. What difference does it make? But anytime you educate the non-target deer, you reduce the comfort that they have with this area, and all the deer in general will stop moving as naturally. That means you get less daylight activity. If the does start acting squirrely, then the bucks are going to pick up on their body language, and they're going to start to get a little bit cautious down in this area too. So you don't want to spook any deer. You know, it's not just the target buck that you have to be careful of, it's every single deer. Every deer that knows that you're hunting that area is potentially one that can communicate that to the other deer, and then eventually the spot starts to go cold. So I'm going to look at this ditch, but that might be our solution here. Obviously I knew that ditch was there. I was just kind of playing along for the sake of the lesson here, but I do not know if it's going to be possible to walk that thing and stay concealed, and whether we can get out of the ditch and into the blind. So let's go take a look. I can see already that I like this ditch from the standpoint of being able to stay hidden. I mean, it's probably 4 feet deep, real straight edge. We're only 10 feet from the ladder, so we would have to create some kind of a barrier here, a visual barrier, some kind of screen. We'll have to figure that part of it out. But the ditch is definitely the way to go. The only problem is, if you look at it, it's just going to be a chainsawing nightmare coming down through there. I mean, I could see hiring interns just to saw this ditch out. I mean, it could be that bad. But maybe Zach can do it. He's pretty young. You know, he's got the ignorance is bliss mentality. He doesn't know how bad it can be, so he'll dive right in there. It's going to be a lot of work. That's the point I'm making. I mean, you can already see right here, I see 15, 20 minutes of work, and we're only looking at the first 20 yards of probably a 250 yard long ditch. But let's walk this out. Like I said, I really like this now as I look at it. I think you can stay low enough in that ditch, hunched over, where any deer bedding on this ridge, they aren't going to see you. And then, you know, obviously there's not a whole lot going on here, but we're more concerned about further across on the next ridge over, and then the plots themselves. Some kind of a visual screen is going to be critical here. I have to think about that a little bit. But the ditch shows a lot of promise, but it is going to create a lot of work. We've almost made it now to the top of the ditch, and no question about it, the ditch is the way to go here. It's probably not as foolproof as what I'd hoped. I think the deer on this side would still be able to see us when we're sneaking down through there. The ditch isn't so deep that they wouldn't be able to see us. But the nice thing is, the deer on the next ridge over that would normally see us when we walk right down the top of this one, they wouldn't be able to see us. So we would cut half of the country that before we might have been blowing deer out of. You know, we would slice that part out of the equation. And I think staying low definitely makes it beneficial even on this side, because if something's bedded just over the top of the rise, you know, we're up on that ridge, they'd probably be able to see us, but down in the ditch, I think we could get right past them. But the main thing is eliminating any deer on that ridge from knowing, and being able to get in there without the deer that would be already out in those food plots, to keep them from knowing that we're coming. And the ditch is definitely the solution to that. So we'll do an off-season episode here in a couple of months where we actually clean out this ditch, and we'll talk about this spot a little bit more. There's a lot of work here, like I said, but once done, then they usually stay pretty well cleared up for, you know, a few years at least before you have to get back in there get back to work. So even though it is a lot of work, it pays dividends over a pretty long period of time. We're done on this spot, but you know, the deer season's been over for a while, and at first you take a deep sigh and go, wow, that was a lot of time spent in the woods. You know, at least it was, you know, for a lot of us here. And in some ways you're thinking, it doesn't feel too bad to have a few extra hours to relax around here each day. But then you get about 2 weeks removed, three weeks removed from the deer season, and you start to get that itch, and you start thinking about it again. And so that's what we're doing now. From here on out, we're going to be spending a lot of time in the woods doing this kind of scouting and looking for shed antlers, starting to map out the food plots for this coming year. That's all stuff that we're going to bring to you in more detail during the Midwest Whitetail Off-Season Series. And that starts towards the tail end of February, and that'll go through until the first part of June. Keep coming back and checking. We're going to do some more of these video blogs along the way. If you get a chance, I've got my new Midwest Whitetail sweatshirt on here and my hat. Pop onto the MW gear section of the website and check out some of this. It's a comfortable sweatshirt. I like it. It takes some good abuse and it's nice and warm. It's probably become my favorite sweatshirt now, and you know, I've got a lot of sweatshirts, so having it be my favorite speaks highly of this one. Check it out, and we'll see you right back here again within the next week or so with another video blog. We'll pick on some more postseason scouting and maybe even be able to find a shed antler along the way.